The cafe smelled of butter and burnt sugar, the kind of place tourists took photos of before tasting anything. I sat at the table in a simple linen dress, not wanting attention, only a quiet seat to share with my son and his wife. Across from me, Belle adjusted the jeweled earrings that swung beneath her glossy hair and leaned toward her mimosa. "You're lucky we even include you?" She smirked, her voice slicing through the polite hum of the room. "Even though you're useless." Her words landed sharper than the silverware neatly arranged between us. My stomach tightened, but my hands stayed steady around the coffee cup. I glanced at Asher, my son, hoping for even the faintest defense. He adjusted his cufflinks instead, eyes locked on his phone, pretending not to hear. My aunt sat beside him, stirring her iced tea with deliberate slowness, lips pressed thin in a nod that looked too much like agreement. Around us, waiters floated by with plates of eggs, Benedict folded like origami, and napkins shaped into swans, but I tasted nothing but bitterness. I forced a smile, the kind that aches behind the eyes, and let their laughter roll past me as though I were invisible. I had learned long ago that silence kept the peace in this family. Anyone who objected was too sensitive. Anyone who asked for respect was the problem. Still, when I looked at Asher, I remembered the boy who once pressed daisies into my palm, not the man who now practiced his salesroom chuckle for the benefit of his wife's smug disdain. The truth settled over me heavier than the coffee in my cup. I wasn't a guest at their table. I was the backdrop. That brunch haunted me the whole drive home to Houston. As the road unspooled, I replayed the years that carried me here. After Robert passed from a sudden heart attack, the world became smaller, heavier. Asher was only 12, and I had promised him his father's absence wouldn't mean the end of his chances. I took the late shift at Mission Hospital's cafeteria, ladling soup until midnight, then woke before dawn to scrub cabins for tourists in the Blue Ridge. My back burned, my hands cracked, and invitations from friends piled up untouched. Still, every sacrifice had been for him. When Asher's acceptance letter from university arrived, I cried in the kitchen, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. He had no idea the relief it gave me that all those sleepless nights and empty bank accounts had led to this. I sent him off to campus with secondhand furniture in a borrowed truck, smiling as if I hadn't pawned my wedding band to cover the deposit. Later, when he wanted his first condo, I refinanced our modest house in Biltmore Village, the home Robert and I had built together. My friends traveled retired, filled their lives with leisure. I clipped coupons and clipped hours of sleep, telling myself every sacrifice was another seed planted in my son's future. And then came the lake house. It had always been spoken of as the family's pride, the place for barbecues, fishing weekends, hurried holiday escapes. They called it our cabin, but the county records carried only my name. Back in 2009, when my father's loan slipped into default and foreclosure loomed, every eye turned to me. No one else had the credit or stability. I signed the papers. I carried the debt. I saved it alone. From then on, every bill tied to that house flowed through me. The insurance, the property taxes, the utilities that hummed, even when the place sat empty. I drove 3 hours from Houston to meet roofers clear storm debris or shovel mud after floods. Each time I left the cabin spotless so the others could arrive with their friends and coolers, posting photos as if it belonged to them. Belle even lent it to her friends, telling them it was part of their family legacy. When I discovered strangers had stayed without my knowledge, I swallowed my anger. For years, I told myself keeping it alive was proof I belonged. But the truth was unavoidable now. I had been nothing more than their safety net, their accountant, their silent servant. That night after brunch, I brewed peppermint tea and opened my laptop. On the screen blinked the family credit account still tethered to my name. Line after line of charges scrolled past groceries, hotels, shopping sprees, all carried by me. My chest burned with humiliation, but something colder steadied my hand. One by one, I removed their names. With each keystroke, the chain snapped. By midnight, only my name remained. It was the first sound of freedom. 2 mornings later, the silence broke. My phone buzzed before dawn with a string of frantic messages from Belle. Their card had been declined at a restaurant in Uptown, humiliating her in front of friends. She demanded an explanation. I let the screen dim without replying and poured hot water over my tea bag. By noon, utility notices from the lake house piled into my inbox warning of suspension. For more than a decade, those bills had been drafted automatically from my account so invisible I hardly thought about them. Now my silence on one end had become chaos on theirs. By evening, Asher had called 3 times in a row. His voicemail tried for charm. "Mom, there must be some mix-up. Can you take a look? We'll fix it, I promise." The 4th call was sharper. "You can't just shut things down without telling me." I set the phone face down and let it ring. The group chat erupted by the weekend. My aunt posted a photo of the cabin porch grass, waist-high, the lights off. "What's going on? Did someone forget the bill?" My brother chimed in with sarcasm about how unreliable things had become. Not one of them mentioned the years I had kept it all running. Not one asked if I was all right. I muted the conversation and stepped onto my balcony. For the first time in years, the air felt light. Every unanswered call was proof I had stopped cushioning them. But the reckoning was only beginning. I left Houston before sunrise, driving east toward Caddo Lake. The roads were quiet pine trees blurring past. The cabin looked the same as always, shutters in need of paint, porch sagging in spots, swing chain rusted with age. Inside, cedar clung to the walls, dust covered the shelves. Photographs hung of summers long gone. Asher as a boy holding his first fish, my parents smiling on the porch, cousins sprawled across the lawn. I took each frame down, wrapping them in newspaper, and setting them in a box. It wasn't anger that guided me, it was clarity. These weren't memories to be left hanging as trophies for others. I sat at the desk in the corner and opened my laptop. A short message to Jared, the attorney, in Marshall proceed with private listing. No public notice until title is clear. My hand hesitated only for a second before pressing send. As I loaded the box into my car, my neighbor Inez leaned over the fence watching. "I always wondered how you kept this place going," she said quietly. "Never once saw anyone else do the work." Her words stopped me cold. For years, I had believed no one noticed that my efforts were invisible. But she had. That truth steadied me as much as the latch on the trunk when I closed it. 2 days later, Inez emailed me a screenshot. No explanation, just the words, "Thought you should see this." The image was a fragment of a mortgage application from months earlier. At the top was Asher's name. He had inquired about refinancing the cabin, hoping to add himself to the deed. The loan officer's reply was blunt. "Title is solely under Rowena Whitfield. It cannot be altered without her consent." My chest tightened. He knew. He had known all along the cabin was mine, that every tax and insurance bill bore only my name. Yet he let Belle sneer at brunch, let her posture as if she and Asher were rightful heirs while I was the burden. Avoidance wasn't his crime. Collusion was. I closed the laptop and exhaled. Selling the cabin no longer felt like rebellion. It was a reckoning, and sooner or later they would arrive at my door. The knock came at dusk, sharp, then insistent. I dried my hands on a dish towel and peered through the peephole. Asher stood on the porch, Belle at his side, both framed by fading light. "Mom, we need to talk," he began, voice tight. Belle pushed past him, her perfume too strong, her tone sharp. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this has been? Declined cards, utilities, shut off at the lake. You've embarrassed all of us." I let her words hang, then turned my gaze to Asher. He tried for guilt. The cabin's part of our family history. Think of the grandkids. They'll never know those summers if you sell it. Without speaking, I picked up the folder I had prepared days earlier. Inside were the deed records, the insurance policies, even the mortgage inquiry screenshot Ines had sent me. I handed it to Asher. His eyes skimmed the page and the color drained from his face. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew it was mine, and you let her treat me like the problem." Belle shifted, confidence cracking. "This is being blown out of proportion. We could have worked something out." I shook my head. Sons don't treat their mothers like ATMs, and wives don't get to rewrite deeds with sneers and entitlement. This ends tonight. Asher blinked hard, searching for the woman he once depended on, the mother who always said yes. But I wasn't her anymore. I steadied my hand on the door, pushed gently, and let it close. No shouting, no dramatics, only the sound of the latch catching. Their muffled voices faded as footsteps retreated down the porch. The house sale moved quickly after that. In a modest office in Marshall, I signed my name across the final documents. Each stroke lifted another weight. When the attorney handed me the confirmation, I felt something settle in my chest, a quiet finality words couldn't touch. The funds transferred that afternoon. A portion went into a trust for my grandchild, locked so tightly neither Asher nor Belle could touch it. The rest I kept simple. I closed every lingering account tied to family use, severed the drafts for utilities, deleted the shared credit portal. For the first time in decades, my ledger carried only my own name. Driving out of Marshall with the windows down, the air sharp with pine, I felt freer than I had in years. Behind me, the cabin was no longer a burden. Ahead lay only open road. I moved into a limestone cottage in Wimberley, tucked between the oaks where the river bent slow and clear. The first morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, unhurried and quiet. I brewed coffee without checking my phone, without bracing for demands stacked in messages. The silence wasn't emptiness, it was freedom. Each day began with a walk along the Blanco River. Its water carried the color of sky and stone, steady and constant. I no longer lived on call for anyone. My time was my own, reading in the afternoons, cooking dinners. I wanted, planting herbs by the window. At night, I sat at my desk with a clean notebook. On the first page, I wrote one line: I was never useless. I was used. I underlined it once, then closed the book. That truth was enough. Weeks passed, and the distance grew. The group chats stayed silent. The phone never rang with family pleas. I didn't chase the quiet. I let it stay. In that stillness, I heard something I hadn't in years, my own voice. Clear and steady, no longer drowned out by theirs. I knew then that inheritance wasn't in money or deeds. True inheritance lived in the lessons we leave, the grit to stand firm, the wisdom to walk away, the courage to choose dignity over approval. I had once believed responsibility proved my worth. But I learned real worth doesn't need to be proven to those unwilling to see it. The river kept moving, and so did I. To anyone listening, know this: you are not defined by who dismisses you, but by how you rise afterward. Family can wound deepest, but their judgment is not the measure of your life. You have the right to choose yourself, to end the cycle of being used, and to build peace that no one else can touch. Thank you for being here with me through this story. If it touched you, please like, share, subscribe, and comment so more stories like this can reach those who need them.